Good morning and welcome to the last Renew Learning webinar of 2022. We hope you had a great Christmas, and of course, if you're watching us on catch up, we hope you had a fantastic New Year's as well. So today we're going to be talking about A-levels and universities and a little bit on IB as well, talking through the options, the implications and the timeline. So hopefully we'll give you guys a little bit of useful information and some things to think about when you're making these important decisions about the next steps in your academic career, wherever you are at the moment.
So we'll be starting off by talking about choosing A-levels or IB. So there are various factors here, whether you're choosing between A-levels or IB, if your school offers that, whether you're choosing the A-levels you take or whether you choose the higher subjects for your IB. Now, these are critically important because they're going to affect what you do at university and potentially beyond that. And so we're going to focus on three specific areas which we think are important to determining your choices here. The first one is working backwards. So I mentioned the impact on your university and your career. So if you have a particular career in mind, whether that be becoming a doctor or becoming someone in finance or whatever thing you want to go into, there may be implications from the A-levels and IBs you choose. So it's important to work backwards and think about whether you want to keep your doors open or whether you want to narrow down and embark upon a chosen path or career. The next thing is enjoyment. Now, as you go further through your academic career, enjoyment becomes more and more important because you're going to spend more and more time doing fewer subjects. So your devotion to each subject becomes a lot bigger. So when you're eventually doing your university degree, you'll be spending all your time doing that one subject. So thinking now about what you enjoy is going to be critically important to the success of your choices. And finally, we can talk about self-assessment. So it's important as you go through this, you think about what are your strengths, what's your weaknesses, and how can you make the right choices to play to those strengths and weaknesses. So the first thing we're focusing on is working backwards. So as you work backwards, you want to think about the career you want to do, and you want to think about the university you want to do. So for example, if you want to study medicine at university, you want to think about the required A-levels that you need to do. So this might not just be the things you think. So for doing medicine, you need to have chemistry and maths, and then biology is recommended. So it's really, really important to focus on what you need and to think about, so if you want to become a musician, what's going to play to your strengths? Are you going to be an actual performing musician and just need to take music? Or do you want to do something where you're writing about music? So English might be something which is valuable to you. Likewise, at university, if you want to take a subject like politics, is it necessary to do politics at A-level or at IB? Or can you just do history and English and keep more doors open in case you want to make any changes as you go through? So thinking about a long-term goal is really important. And what I would stress is that you think about keeping your options open, because so often people choose at 16, they say, I want to go and be a lawyer. And they get to the time when they're 18 or 19 or 20 and thinking about doing law further on, and they realize that perhaps law isn't the thing they envisaged when they sat down at 16. So having a third A-level or even a fourth A-level or IB, which is something slightly different, will help you to think about what other options you can keep open.
Brilliant. Yeah, in terms of enjoyment, Ed alluded to it there. A lot of it is because of this numbers game, which is when you're studying your GCSEs, you're sitting normally between sort of 8, 9, to 11 or 12 subjects. That's splitting your time in the week quite thinly across those subjects. So even the subjects that you don't really have a massive passion for, it's not too difficult to kind of commit a little bit of time to it and to try your best. When you get to this A-level, you get to this IB stage, you're doing it between a lot fewer subjects. And likewise with university. And slightly, you sometimes see people choosing A-levels, choosing IB subjects because they think they ought to, because they think it's potentially employable, they think it's the right thing to do. And that's really not the approach to take, because of that massive increase in time that you then have. People do then really struggle if they're trying to study something that they don't have this passion for. So the enjoyment side of things really becomes important. Then talking about IB versus A-level, in comparing these two, this is something where actually you should also consider what it is that you enjoy in academia. If you have this option, some schools just do one, some schools do the other, but some schools have both. So if you're having to make this decision between IB or A level, then it's worth thinking about the type of person you are. And did you really enjoy doing lots of subjects at GCSE? Do you like trying lots of things? Are there lots that you're considering doing at sixth form that actually you'd like to keep as many as possible? Or would you like to really narrow down? Do you have your blinkers on, your sights set on what you might want to do at university? So it's that choice between breadth and depth. IB, you're going to do lots of subjects in slightly less detail. A level, you're going to do a few subjects in very specific detail. And then finally, it's worth just thinking what types of subjects you enjoy and how they might interact with each other. As well as certain subjects you need to get into certain degrees at university, there's other subjects that really pair well together. So for example, if you're going to do physics A level or IB, then you almost certainly want to also be doing maths. There's a lot of crossover, and there's also a lot of benefit to doing both. At the same time, you might be someone that enjoys doing lots of different types of subjects, and you want to do a really fun combo that might be some maths, some history, some art, and they don't necessarily play together, but you enjoy them all separately, and it keeps lots of doors open. So bear in mind that massive jump in time, the commitment that you'll be doing at sixth form versus what you've had at GCSE in terms of each subject, and actually think, what am I genuinely going to enjoy doing? Because of that step up, people choose based on things that aren't necessarily enjoyment, and just because they think they ought to do something, they then really, really struggle when it comes to that crunch time in sixth form around exams. So that's really something important to stress is don't make decisions based on what you kind of think you ought to be doing. Make decisions based on what you know you're going to actually be passionate about and enjoy working on over the next 2 years.
Thanks for that, Benedict. The next is self-assessment. So when you're choosing your A-level or your IB, the person who knows best is you, but there's certain things you can do to make sure that you actually make the right decisions. The first one is honesty. So when you're thinking about your A-level choices or your IB choices, you want to be thinking about your strengths and your weaknesses. So not just enjoyment, but think about what can you do really well? Because when you go to university or when you go for a job, people look and think, what about you is brilliant? Not what are you good at across the board, but what's the one thing you're really good at? So if you're really, really good at history or really good at French or really good at maths, whatever it might be, think about, is it worth pursuing that at A level? And is it worth keeping that there so you can then feed off it at A level and then or IB? And you have a chance to really delve into it in much greater depth and maybe pick up different elements of the course that you didn't get to enjoy at GCSE. And also you can talk to your teachers to get a better judge of whether they think you'll be capable of doing something at A level. One of the biggest struggles we see from pupils is people who end up taking subjects, normally maths or sciences, who didn't have such a strong background in maths or science. And there can be quite a large jump from GCSEs to IB and A level. And so being aware of that jump and what you need to do will make sure that when you come to the summer of your final exams, you don't regret the choices you've made. You're able to kind of prepare in the knowledge that you really are doing the things you love and also the things you know you are capable of doing. And this is where the tutors you have can kind of play into that. If you have a tutor for a particular subject, you can talk to them about their experiences teaching that at A level and IB and talk to them about the challenges which that might pose. And finally, beware of new things. So at A level and IB, you have this wonderful opportunity to dive into new topics, whether that be politics or history of art or psychology, depending on what your school offers. These can be really, really exciting. And often we see students who think, you know what, it's going to be something, a brand new challenge. I like reading the papers. Politics is going to be great. It's going to be a perfect thing for me to do. But it takes a bit of self-assessment, a bit of standing back and thinking, what are the pros and cons of doing a new subject? Yes, it's exciting. Yes, it's new. And yes, you might not have failed it before. But just because you enjoy the concept, it doesn't mean you're actually going to enjoy the syllabus. So what we recommend is look through and see what you're going to learn. If you're doing politics, are you going to be learning about the bits of politics you find interesting? Or is it going to be a more deeper assessment of the constitutional factors which go into making politics? And again, renewed learning can be there to help. We have tutors in every single subject from psychology through to philosophy. And we can arrange a taster session for you. And we also do a variety of courses like the course we did in October half term, where we had introduction to philosophy, economics, Mandarin, Arabic, to name a few. And those taster sessions, whether one-to-one or as a bigger class, can be a great way to kind of get a taster of what is to come. And so next, we're going to be talking about university. I'll hand over to Benedict now.
Brilliant. Yeah, so hopefully that's given a decent idea on sixth form. And of course, anyone that's a little older thinking about university, then this section should be useful. But also, even if you're choosing those A levels, it's worth having an idea in your mind, a bit of an oversight of the next steps you're going to have, the decisions you need to make over the next couple of years. So we'll talk through three aspects here. So on three different areas that are important when considering university. So the first of those is going to be thinking about the course that you do. So obviously this is vitally important, is what subject you're going to do at university. Once you've considered that and the various factors within that, you're going to need to decide the university. And obviously these two link together. Certain universities have different courses and they teach in different styles, which is something that's really important to appreciate. Is doing one subject, doing even something like medicine at different universities can give you a different experience. Some might be more hands-on, some might be more academic, and that can play in across the board that different universities have slightly different courses. So once you've decided the type of course, you can then start to look at universities and think of the type of university you want to go to, big, small, and various other factors. And then the final thing that we'll talk about is more to do with the actual process and that timeline and the applying, which is how you're going to stand out when it comes to filling in that UCAS form, when it comes to applying, the different factors that can play into that, but actually the pretty common themes that you should be considering when you're approaching that process. So we'll start by jumping into talking about the course. So again, a little bit like taking on a new A-level, it can be difficult to have an idea of what it's actually going to like when you're studying at university across any subject, even if it's something you've done all the way through school, like physics or chemistry. That university side of things can be very, very different. Often, especially in the sciences, you're doing proper lab work for the first time. In the languages, for example, you might actually be writing a lot more essays and analysing literature more than you've done previously and doing less language work. So there can be these real changes. So it's really important to get a good idea of what a subject is actually like at university. Now, there's a few ways you can do that. Number one is obviously talking to people who do that subject at university or did it, back in the day when they were students themselves. So talking to people is a really great way of determining whether this subject that you've enjoyed at GC, you've enjoyed at A-level or IB, whether it's one that you want to do there. And even more important, if it's a subject that you haven't done at A-level, such as something perhaps like philosophy or a type of music that you haven't actually done in an academic setting. So really important to talk to people. Another great resource can actually be the universities themselves, in particular, their YouTube channels, because often universities have recorded lectures from first year that you can go and watch as a prospective student to get an idea of what it's like. So you can go and look up university lectures that might be a first year engineering lecture or a first year politics lecture. That kind of thing can give you a really good idea of what it's actually going to be like to be a student in this subject. Is this lecture actually going to be quite similar to what you've experienced up till now, or will it give you a very different idea of what you're going to be studying? So that's a really, really great resource as well, is online lectures. And then finally, looking up your own resources such as higher level books. So finding reading lists from universities in a particular subject and having a go at tackling a first year set text can be a really good idea as well. Now, all of this will seem very scary and will seem very hard, and that shouldn't scare you off, because you've obviously got your sixth form academic progression to still come, so you'll find it all easier when you get there. And of course, it may just be a bit of a challenge that you'll need to work through with your tutors when you get to university. So don't be scared if you try a lecture, if you try a book and it seems way over your head. It's more to give you an idea of the kind of things you'll be doing and what that process is. And with this, as with A-levels, we can give lots of advice. We have lots of people doing all types of subjects across universities. So if you ever want to talk to someone, if you ever want recommendations, if you ever want reading lists, that's all the kind of thing that we can help you with, regardless of subject. So yeah, really informing yourself about exactly what it's going to be that you're doing when you take on a course, and ensuring that you're not just assuming it'll be one thing and then you get there and the worst realization is realizing you've signed up for something completely different to what you thought in your mind. So yeah, getting informed about the course.
Brilliant. And then next is the university. So this is something which I think is really, really exciting. It's when you start to go on open days, start to look around potential places you might be spending 3 or 4 years, or potentially longer if you're doing medicine or something like that. Now, I think when you think about which university you want to go to, you want to picture yourself in that town or in that city and think, do I want to be here? Can I imagine myself having a great time here? And if you're doing UCAS, you'll choose up to 5 options. We recommend you fulfill all 5 options with a range of different universities, from ones which are considered safer to those which are more aspirational. Now, these can be in terms of the required grades to get in. You can think about this in terms of the proportion of people that get in, the percentage of successful applicants, all of which you can find online. Now, what I would recommend is, if you do have a university that stands out as your #1 pick, don't put too many eggs into one basket too early, but instead try to make sure you have a really, really good second choice, whether that be any university that you think is right for you. And choosing university that's right for you isn't just about the grades, isn't just about the league tables, everything which you can find online. We think that personal factors are really, really important. And things to consider here are the location. Do you want to be close to home? Do you want to be far away from home? Do you want to be close to a beach potentially? Do you want to be somewhere where you can fulfill your sporting goals, your aspirations on the hockey pitch or the rugby pitch? Is it somewhere where music and theatre is really emphasized? So choosing those factors is really important to make sure it suits your personality as well as your academic strengths. Some students prefer being in big cities where there's lots to explore. Others prefer smaller towns where they can get to know their favorite coffee shops and bars and shops really quickly to kind of feel more at home. You might want to think about a campus versus a town university. Both these have very different feels. And the best way to really get to know this and to know what's going to suit you is either to have the chance to go and look at it yourself on an open day, or speak to people who've gone there and done the course and been at the university. And if you need anyone to have that talk with you, we have lots of contacts at every university who we can put you in touch with, and we'd be more than happy to do so. So when you choose your university, make sure it's someone that's right for you, and make sure that you have a variety of different options, all of which you're happy to go to, and all of which you're excited to go to. And what I would say is it's very, very rare to find someone who hasn't had a brilliant experience at university. So don't worry too much if you don't get the offer that you want, or you're not quite sure at this stage. Wherever you end up, as long as you've done your research and you've checked that it's somewhere which you think it is, you'll have a great time. So handing over to Benedict now and standing out.
Absolutely. I think that's it's an underrated aspect, is thinking of the difference between going to university in London and going to a small town. Is that actually people often just think what's the best university, where is in the league table, but actually that's just as important as the type of university you're going to enjoy going to. So now talking about getting in there, getting into each university, talking about standing out. Now the application process is going to vary. So the main variations are medicine and Oxbridge, regardless of subject for Oxbridge, but medicine across most universities, because you're going to have 2 extra aspects compared to other subjects in other universities, which is aptitude test and interview. However, the themes that you want to put into applying for those and putting your best work into those is actually very similar if you're applying to any other university as well. It's just that in those cases where you don't have an aptitude test interview, you're much more limited to your personal statement. That's the only thing that they're seeing alongside your grades, and that's important. But the key to all of this is, as we see here, showing passion. So when people are reading your personal statement, when people are interviewing you for a place, when they're considering, is this student someone that we're going to make an offer to, what they're really thinking is this person somebody that we want to teach? Is this person somebody that we want going to lectures? Is this person somebody that we want as part of university life? So as much as it is about, having good grades and being a good student, it's also about being really passionate, being really inquisitive about your chosen subject and demonstrating that. It's not, sadly, quite enough just to say that you love this subject and you really want to study it, because everybody that's going for a subject is going to say that. What it's about is then demonstrating that passion, demonstrating that inquisitiveness in a tangible way. So there are ways that you can do that. Number one, most kind of straightforwardly, is just reading, having books that you've gone and read. You liked this subject, or you read about this in the newspaper, you went and read that book or that article by that author. That's a really great first step. And obviously then making sure that everything you put on your personal statement book-wise, you have actually read before you get caught out in an interview. So that can be one kind of simple way of doing it. But then we can think a little more ambitiously. We've got about, almost a year until UCAS is being submitted, a little bit earlier for Oxford, and a little bit later for other universities. But you've got around about a year, and there's a really big chunk of time in there, even if you're approaching to apply next year, which is your summer holiday. So this can be a really good time to think about what kind of projects, to use a kind of quite broad term there, what kind of projects could you do that could be really impressive? So that could be doing an online course in something. It could be going and doing a residential course somewhere. It could be signing up for something. It could be getting together with a couple of mates at school, talking to a teacher and coming up with an experiment that you can actually do around your local town over the summer. So if you're doing science, for example, you could use some basic equipment and come up with an experiment that you could do over the summer. If you're doing literature, it could be actually approaching some essay competitions. It could be starting to try and write a short novel. So with any subject, there can be some really good ideas. And again, that's where actually talking to people that have done your subject, especially if it's at your dream university, can be a really good way forward to see the kind of things they did and then start to think about some ideas. So really think of that summer holiday and think, when I get to the end of that summer holiday, what am I going to have done that I'm then going to be really proud to put on my personal statement, or what I'd be really proud to then talk about in an interview? So they can be, formal things with medicine. They can be things such as placements in hospitals, or they can be really informal things such as just deciding to try and write your own short story over the summer. So you've really got to think, what am I going to do that tangibly shows I am passionate about the subject, that's going to make a teacher want to teach you? That's really the main thing. And then we should touch on the fact that there is this, more formal aspect to doing a project, especially if you're considering this as you're going into your sixth form. So you've got a little more time, which is the option of a kind of an EPQ, or a sort of formal qualification that's a subject that you do alongside your A levels, alongside your IB. We've got a number of students that are doing EPQs either at school and we're supporting, or actually with us. That can be a good option if you deciding you've got that time alongside your other subjects and you have something you particularly want to pursue. That can be a good experience, sort of good taste of university life, actually, because it's a little bit like writing a mini kind of thesis. So that can be something as well. But really, throughout all of that, the type of student that university and that course are going to want to teach, that's what you're needing to show.
Brilliant. And then the end goal. We are confident that for every student, there is a right set of A levels or IBs, and ultimately university, if university is right for you. That will mean that you enjoy your next 2 to 7 years of studying, whether you go to university or not, and somewhere where you can enjoy yourself, flourish, and also make lots of friends, have a brilliant time whilst doing so. And so our advice to you would be, go out and just think, be conscious of the choices you make. Think about what options you have, whether you want to open your doors or narrow down to a particular field. Think about what's going to suit you academically. So think about what's going to suit you in your personal life as well. Think about what's important to you, and make sure that if you do make a wrong decision at any point, it's always easy to change. Whether you want to change your A level halfway through, or you get to your first time at university and realize your course isn't quite right, just take a second, think, make sure it's the right decision, and then you can always go back and reassess and try something else. And to that end, if you are thinking about doing A levels, we would always say, if you are unsure, we could always start by doing 4. You can always start by doing a 4th A level. That's something you think, I might want to do 4 all the way through, or maybe you generally aren't sure between your 3rd and 4th choice. Just start with 4, see what the first half of the first term is like, and then at that October half term, you can think, okay, is this working out? Do I like the subject? If not, should I drop back down to 3 and keep going? So there's always flexibility, and there's always a way to make sure that you are going to have the best time at university and at A level. So I hope that makes sense. And to everyone listening, we'll be turning over to Q&A. And to everyone on a recording, thank you very much. And please feel free to get in contact with us if you have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that really reassures you a little bit as well, that, as much as it's great to get the right decision, the right A levels, the right university, and hopefully that advice helps you too, there are always options to then switch back. You can always assess. And obviously, if anyone's got a more specific idea whether they're wanting to go across to the Netherlands, to America, to Canada, obviously there might be little different bits of advice that we want to talk about, but we can help with any of that. So do just get in touch.